With the US Army moving from 5.56mm NATO to the 6.8x51mm Common Cartridge, is this the direction that Australia's forces are headed? That's what Australian defence site Defence Connect is saying, reporting that Australian leadership in mid-2025 confirmed interest in moving to a higher calibre weapon system. Making things even more interesting is that the media outlet believes that AR pattern rifles will be the future of Australia's defence forces, meaning the eventual phase-out of the beloved Steyr. Could this actually happen one day? Well, let's unpack the possibility for today's video. First off, it's worth making absolutely clear that contracts have not yet been formalised, and so this technically still leaves things open. The current situation for Australia's defence forces is that the enhanced F-88 EF-88 rifle, chambered in 5.56mm NATO, has racked up about a decade of service with the ADF since it was rolled out in mid-2016. The bullpup rifle with 30-round magazine is manufactured in Lithgow, New South Wales by Lithgow Arms, which is now owned by Thales Australia. As you might be able to tell by the EF-88 name, the weapon is an upgrade of the F-88, a rifle that had been in service for about 25 years. It will probably get a video of its own, but the website Rogue Adventurer points out that the EF-88, when compared to the F-88, has a redesigned buttstock and additional Stanag 4694 accessory rails. Those are the main differences, but the receiver was also modified to reduce mass, which shifted the center of gravity rearward closer to the pistol grip, improving balance. Seeing as rifles tend to stay in service for 20 to 30 years, there's still some time before Australia needs to decide whether it wants to change things up. However, it's being speculated by Defence Connect that Thales Australia could potentially contend for a future 6.8mm contract with a system of their own, possibly based on their Australian Combat Assault Rifle or ACAR platform. For the record, Thales has neither confirmed nor denied the speculation. It's added that support personnel would remain with the 5.56mm NATO ammunition they currently use, with suggestions that an AR pattern rifle would fill this role. On the topic of moving to 6.8mm, most people in the defence world already know the rationale. The larger round, with its higher velocity and higher energy on target, is better able to defeat body armour worn by near-peer adversaries, and better able to penetrate various forms of cover, including lightly armoured vehicles. In an Australian context, China seems to be the most likely potential threat as tensions continue to rise in the Asia-Pacific region. The US Army has led the way with this monumental shift in calibre for standard service rifles, and this is highlighted as adding considerable momentum for Australian troops to move to a 6.8mm calibre rifle. The Americans are moving to the 6.8mm M7 rifle, the US Army's variant of the SIG MCX Spear. With this in mind, Defence Connect says that such a rifle would, quote, almost certainly be considered a contender for any future rifle contract with the ADF due to interoperability and joint force compatibility as well as historical preference for US-adopted military systems. Indeed, it's reported that Victorian defence company Aquaterro, which supplies Sig Sauer products in Australia, has confirmed its interest in entering the race to find the next ADF service rifle. The company's Director of Defence and Strategic Programs has this to say on the matter. Aquaterro, as an existing supplier of Sig Sauer platforms, optics and ammunition to the Australian Defence Force, is keen to offer the M7 rifle in 6.8x51mm as the close combatant rifle. The company executive then said that the manufacturer of M7 rifles and the associated common cartridge case/hybrid cartridge case ammunition in Australia is absolutely feasible, with the Thales/Lithgow Arms ACAR also being an AR pattern rifle. It looks like Australia is headed towards this popular widespread conventional rifle design, destined to drop the long-running Steyr bullpup, something that we're sure will upset many, many Aussies. For what it's worth, when Defence Connect asked Australia's Department of Defence about replacing the ADF's current service rifle, the department was tight-lipped, simply confirming that the EF-88 meets current requirements. To be more specific, a department spokesperson was quoted saying, among other things, The weapon has demonstrated reliability in challenging operating environments, including littoral environments, through extensive training and exercises within Australia and the Indo-Pacific. Compared to the F-88 Osteier, the EF-88 improves close combat and general combat capability due to its accuracy and lethality, improved ergonomics, balance, and increased mounting options for ancillary devices. And so if there is work going on behind the scenes to make the next frontline service weapon a higher caliber, the government isn't speaking about it directly. While we somewhat covered the trade-offs in an older video over on Baltic Defence Review, it's worth reviewing them in the context of potential ADF adoption. The biggest thing to keep in mind is that higher pressure and higher velocity are not free, and the engineering trade-offs are real and immediate, as hot, high-pressure ammunition accelerates barrel erosion. It creates harder engineering requirements for bolts and actions and increases the heat and wear signature of sustained fire. For the US Army, concerns about shortened barrel life and component stress were raised repeatedly during program testing and in early field reports. No, these aren't exactly fatal flaws, but they can present a logistics and maintenance headache that must be managed with metallurgy, replacement cycles, and doctrine changes. And so it's those trade-offs that must be carefully considered before making the decision to ditch 5.56 NATO. Recent conflicts and deployments, including counter-terror operations and combat in Ukraine, show that modern 5.56 loadings such as M855A1 are substantially improved over legacy ball rounds in both penetration against intermediate barriers and terminal performance. For many missions, whether they be urban operations, close quarters, or many expeditionary tasks, the combination of lower weight, controllability, and modern projectile design keeps 5.56 competitive and often preferable. If the ADF decides to adopt 6.8mm into its operations, then it'll have to prepare its supply chain and logistics properly to avoid any headaches associated with having to manage the additional caliber on this larger scale. On this matter, it's good to know that the aforementioned Aquaterro is eager and happy to locally produce weapons and ammunition of that caliber. At this point in time, in the mid-2020s, the EF-88 isn't necessarily old, but clearly Australia is thinking hard about what it wants to do next, particularly as these big decisions take a good amount of time. Additionally, if 5.56 is to remain with support personnel, then the military could arm its combat forces with 6.8mm sooner than later, while leaving the frontline Steyrs to support personnel, as we imagine they would still have a few years left in them. But all of this, if true, would be quite an interesting development. We know a lot of our Baltic Defence Review audience has strong feelings about AR pattern rifles taking over most Western militaries, and to see the iconic Steyr phased out of Australian service one day is a sad thought. But what do you think about this possibility for Australia's defence forces? Let us know by leaving a comment.